Maseches Nazir Daf Yud Dalid. We begin at the bottom of Daf Yud Gimel Amid Beis, immediately following the Mishnah. Gemara asks a series of 5 shailas, which are somewhat related to the last Mishnah. The Gemara will answer one of them. Then the Gemara will go into a different set of halachas. So the first shaila is asked by Rava. Rava asked the shaila, what happens if somebody says, I'm Mekabel Naziris, which is going to start in 20 days from now. Then afterwards he says, and now right now I'm Mekabel Naziris that should last for 100 days. So the question is, does he want this Naziris of 100 days to start now and have to be interrupted after 20 days, like we learned in the last Mishnah? And then he'll have to do the Naziris which he had said first, that begins in 20 days. He'll have to do that, finish that, and then he can finish the remaining 80 days of his 100-day Naziris. Do you say that? Or do you say, no, he didn't mean for this Naziris to start until after the Naziris that's starting in 20 days from now. So for the next 20 days he has nothing, then he has 30 days Naziris, and then he starts his 100 days. So Gemara asks, why do you ask that? Why was a shayla in the case of 100 days? Why didn't he ask about 2 normal Naziris? He said, I want to do a regular Naziris which starts in 20 days, and then he said, I want to do a regular Naziris which starts now. He didn't say now, he said, Stam, I want to do a regular Naziris. Does that start now, or does that start after it completes the first Naziris that he mentioned, which starts 20 days from now? So Gemara says, yeah, that is one shayla Rava asked, and the second shayla is an imtim tzalimer based on the first one. If you'll say in the first case, if you'll say in the case that you just mentioned, that where he's makabel 2 Naziris in regularly, both 30 days long, one in 20 days, and one starting now. So if you'll say that he probably wants to start it after the 30 days finish, doesn't want it to start now, because people don't want to interrupt their Naziris. So maybe that's only true in a case where it's a 30-day Naziris. So if he does 20 days now, the only thing that'll be left after the interruption is another 10 days. 10 days is not a real Naziris. It's not enough time for your hair to grow. But maybe if he did a Naziris of 100 days, he'll do 20 days now, he'll still have 80 days left. Maybe there he will want to do an interruption, because the 80 days that are left count as a real Naziris. That's enough to grow hair and to turn it into a real Nazir. It's a significant chunk of time. So now the Gemara says a third shayla. The Gemara says, now if you want to say that it is chal, so now my next question is, what if somebody says, I'm a Nazir in 20 days, it's the standard Nazirs of 30 days, and then he says, and now I'm a Nazir forever. Did he mean for this forever Naziris to start now? Or did he mean for this forever Naziris to start after he finishes the Naziris that he mentioned? Since this is a forever Naziris, is that something that he meant to just run forever with just a brief interruption? Or did he mean, no, anything which is forever is going to continue afterwards, because there that's going to go forever anyway? Mars fourth shayla is, what happens if he says, I want to do Naziris Shimshin now? He says, I want to start Naziris in 30 days, in 20 days, and then he says, from now I want to do Naziris Shimshin. The significance of Naziris Shimshin is that it cannot be removed by She'ela l'chacham. A regular Naziris could be taken off with She'ela l'chacham. So it could be that all other types of Naziris, the one which he'll do now starts right away, because we don't even know that the one that starts in 20 days is ever going to happen. He may do She'ela l'chacham and take it off before it ever starts. Therefore, this one, which is just starting now, is a vade, that one starts. Now, in the case of Naziris Shimshin, he can't take it off. So therefore, maybe in that case, it should not start now, because this is a Naziris which you can't take off. It's for sure going to happen. Okay, now the Gemara's last shayla, which is apparently unrelated. The Gemara says, what if somebody says, I am like Moshe on the 7th of Adar? What does that mean? Moshe was both born and died on the 7th of Adar. Pashtus is, when he died, many people were makabel Naziris upon themselves. It was a common practice upon the death of a tzaddik. Now, the shayla here is, what did he mean when he said Moshe on the 7th of Adar? Did he mean the day that he was born, or did he mean the day that he died? If he meant the day that he was born, there's no Naziris Kabbalah here. If he meant the day that he died, then there is a Naziris Kabbalah. So the Gemara only answers the first question. That's where he says, I'm going to be Makabbalah regular Naziris beginning in 20 days and 100-day Naziris now. So for Bryce, that says explicitly, in that case, what he has to do is start now, keep 20 days, stop, do 30 days for the other Nazirus, and then continue and finish the other 80 days. So we've resolved that Shaila from an explicit Brisa. The Gemara now goes into a new topic. It refers back to our Mishnah and goes into the topic of what happens if somebody becomes Tameh and he has a paused Nazirus. The Gemara has two cases. In our Mishnah, we had a case where somebody says, I'm going to become a Nazir when I have a son. And then he says, I'm a Nazir Stam. So now he has his Nazirus, the one which he said second. And then he has a son in the middle of that Nazirus. So now he has to be makabel upon himself the Nazirus that he said he's going to do when he said this one first. So Lachas, he has to pause the second Nazirus, do the first Nazirus, and then he could continue the second Nazirus. So the Gemara says, what if he becomes Tameh during the middle Nazirus, during the Nazirus which is paused in the first Nazirus? When we become Tameh, the entire Nazirus is canceled and has to be done over again from scratch. The question is, that's true for the middle Nazirus. What about the Nazirus which was paused? Does that paused Nazirus, is that also have to be redone from scratch? Or since it's paused, it stays and it lasts? Similar Shaila the Gemara asks, what happens if he becomes a Mitzaira in the middle of Nazirus? A regular Nazirus, a person's a Nazir, and let's say on day 15 he becomes a Mitzaira. So the halacha is, can't be a Nazir and a Mitzaira at the same time, so he has to pause his Nazirus until he gets out of his Taras and he continue his Nazirus. He doesn't have to start over, just continue. But what if he becomes Tameh Mace while he's a Mitzaira? Now you are in a state of pause. So in both these cases, the Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan says the paused Nazirus is knocked down and he has to do it over again. And Rish Lakish says the paused Nazirus is paused and it doesn't affect it, and he could pick it up again as soon as he finishes the middle Nazirus or the Taras, and he becomes Tahar from the Tamas Mace that he had. So we want to know, why do we have to say both Machleksin? So the Gemara says you have to say both Machleksin because in the case of two Nazirus, it makes much more sense to say that it knocks down the first Nazirus, because it's really one long Nazirus. You can view it as one long Nazirus. It's more likely that the original Nazirus is still considered active if he's in the middle of another Nazirus, because it's also Nazirus. But that the original Nazirus is considered active when he's in the middle of Taras, that's less likely. So therefore we have to say the case of two Nazirus, and to show that even in that case, Rish Lakish says it's not so you don't have to start over. And you also have to say the case of Tzaras to show that even in that case, Rabbi Yochanan says it is Seiser and you do have to start over. The Gemara now discusses what would this machlokes play out in a case of somebody becomes Tameh when he's just growing his hair but he's finished his Nazirus. That means as follows: if a person finishes his Nazirus, so he brings Karbanos and he shaves his head. However, if for some reason his hair was cut in the middle of the Nazirus, let's say Ba'onis, he was attacked and people chopped off his hair. So the halacha is he has to do 30 days from then of not cutting hair before he could do the hair cutting Seder, because he has to have a minimum of 30 days growth on his head. So from the Nazirus still ends when the 30 days of Nazirus are over, but now he has to just keep his hair on. He has to wait until 30 days from the time that they were cut to finish to do the karbanos and the hair cutting. The question is, if he becomes tamei during that time, what's the halacha? So machlekes Rav and Shmuel, what Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish would say. So Rav says, even according to Rav Yochanan, who says that a paused Nazirus gets knocked down if you become tamei, this is different. This is not a paused Nazirus. The Nazirus is over. You're just waiting for hair cutting, and that's not a problem if he becomes tamei then, and therefore he doesn't have to do his Nazirus over. Shmuel says no. Rav Yochanan would still say that it's actually Seiser, and here even Rish Lakish would say that it's Seiser, because Rish Lakish only says that it's not Seiser because it's one long Nazirus. But here it's not considered part of the actual Nazirus itself. There it's two separate Nazirusin, that is to say. It's two Nazirusin, the second one is a separate one. Here this haircutting period is part of his neck. It's an extension of his original Nazirus. Even Rish Lakish would agree that it has to be that you would lose all the days if somebody became tamei then. Now the Gemara brings in Rav Chizda, who brings in another case. Rav Chizda says that everybody will agree, Rav and Shmuel will all agree, in a case where he brings the karbanos, and before he gets a chance to cut his hair, it becomes tamei then. So everyone will agree that now he's stuck for good and he can't get out of it. Why? He can't continue with the hair cutting because he's tamei now. You have to be tar in order to continue the process. And he can't continue and bring a karbanos over again when he becomes tar. Obviously, he can't continue with these karbanos because they would already be expired. But he can't bring more karbanos because he already brought the karbanos. So he's stuck. He has no takan, he can't be fixed. Now, the Gemara asks, not so fast. This halacha here was said by Reb Chisda. The Gemara asks, hold on a second. The Machlekes Tanaim, if you need to shave the hair in order to take off the halachas of Nazirus, if the hair cutting is part of the process, it's ma'akev, if you have to do it. According to Rabbanan, it's not ma'akev. If he doesn't have to do it, then Nazirus is over as soon as he brings karbanos. If that's true, what's Reb Chisda talking about, B'chal? The Nazirus is over already before the hair cutting. And what argues on him is Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, you have to do the hair cutting, otherwise the process is not completed. So Gemara asks if that's true, so then the karbanos are also cancelled. If it becomes tamei, the process is not completed, his Nazirus is not over. When he comes tamei, he messed up the whole thing. He has to start over. So why can't he bring a karbanos again the next time? So Gemara says, no, you're right. In Rabbi Eliezer, that would be the halacha. We'll go in the Rabbanan. When we said that he can't be fixed, we don't mean he can't get out of his Isuri Nazirus. So his Nazirus are over without the haircut. We just mean he can never do the mitzvah of the haircut. That haircutting mitzvah he's never going to get. The Gemara now discusses what happens if somebody becomes tamei or violates the other Nazirus halachas. He drinks wine or he cuts his hair between the end of his Nazirus and the beginning of his karbanos and haircut process. His Nazirus is over, but he still hasn't brought those karbanos, he hasn't completed the process, and therefore he's not allowed to do any of those three things. So Gemara comes to Rabbi Chanina, who says this is a split halacha. If he becomes tamei, he gets malchus for violating his Nazirus, even though his Nazirus is over. However, if he drinks wine or he gets a haircut, he does not get malchus for that. So Gemara wants to know what's the difference. Where do you see that there's a difference? Gemara first suggests maybe because about tumah it says kol yimei hazir el Hashem, all the days. The word kol is to include even days that are after the Nazirus is over, before the karbanos are brought. Somebody asks, it says kol by wine and by hair cutting also. It says kol yemei neder nizrei tar le'avar al roshai, and it says kol yemei nizrei mikol sheyasam migefen hayayin. So it says kol by all three. Somebody says, okay, you have to give a different source. The reason is because in the Psukim of Tumah it says v'timei rosh nizrei. It refers to Tumah as being rosh nizrei, as being something which is dependent on his hair. Until the hair cutting process, which refers to the whole karbanos, until that all is completed, the Isser of Tumah still applies. It doesn't say such an expression by the other two halachas. So Gemara asks, is it Brisa that says clearly this halacha is not true? Brisa says mefurish that somebody who finished his Nazirus but did not bring his karbanos or shave his head yet, he's not allowed to drink wine, become tamei, or cut his hair, and if he does, he gets malchus for any of them. So Gemara agrees. Tiyufta, this clearly rejects and refutes Rabbi Chanina's halach.